Contrary to Republican conjecture, remedying past discrimination is not, in turn, a discrimination. And we're not going to sit here and pretend racism is over just because one black person on the Supreme Court agreed that it should be. They want you to believe that a Harvard graduate with over 20 years of experience, who happens to be a black woman, is not qualified, but a Fox News personality is qualified to run the Department of Defense, and the WWE executive is qualified to run the Department of Education.
Today in Make It Make Sense news, racism is over, at least according to white Republicans. Like Kentucky representative and man who somehow always looks like he's just taken a fat dump, James Comer.
The Biden-Harris administration has forced DEI initiatives into nearly every agency and program within the federal government.
That was him, mere moments before getting absolutely demolished and demasculated, which seems to be a Republican kink, by Democratic Representative Summer Lee from Pennsylvania, which we'll see in a second here. And the purpose of this House Oversight Committee hearing was for Comer to encourage members of the House to support the Dismantle DEI Act, a bill that would modify the Civil Rights Act to outlaw diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the federal government.
DEI initiatives destroy morale, decrease recruitment, and potentially violate federal law.
Right, the party of law and order and family values that elected a convicted felon and wants to appoint an alleged PDF file as Attorney General is worried about DEI practices violating federal law.
It makes perfect sense, Lois.
These initiatives spread divisive and exclusive ideologies in our federal government workplaces. This bill prohibits funding for such programs and creates a new Civil Rights Act protection against requiring individuals to participate in such programs. The bill will lend legislative support to the incoming Trump administration's efforts to eradicate the Biden-Harris administration's entrenchment of leftist DEI policies in the executive branch. I urge my colleagues to support this necessary bill.
But some of Comer's colleagues did not support his dog whistle dismantle DEI bill, and they made it very clear why.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not in favor of the Dismantle Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Act, or what it maybe would more aptly be called the dismantling any semblance of support or opportunity for certain American acts. We know who those Americans are, Americans who have not enjoyed centuries of unfair advantages by keeping others enslaved or segregated or disenfranchised or incarcerated or redlined or gerrymandered or excluded by law. Americans who've lived with disabilities or had their relationships criminalized or their gender expression demonized. If we're being honest here, this bill, which will wipe out every diversity, equity, and inclusion program in our federal agencies, plus those who contract with us, plus those who receive grant money, plus our schools, is nothing new. This is just the final piece of a decades-long obsession with targeting and dismantling anything that might give marginalized people a fair shot, including DEI programs, which honestly started the second the Civil Rights Act passed. Policies like affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion are the closest things we've had to the mythical bootstraps that some of my colleagues insist historically and currently harmed communities need to pick themselves up by. After centuries of efforts to keep us out of schools and universities, from jobs and elected office, Republicans targeting these policies are no accident. Why do predominantly conservative white men believe that the success of a black person or the opportunity or access of a black person is an existential threat to them? DEI is not given any unfair advantage that society itself does not already confer on certain Americans. It merely exists to ensure that all other people, that women, minoritized folks, queer folks, disabled folks, have the same opportunities to succeed and thrive in our workforce and our schools as people who have not had those opportunities systematically and legally stripped from them do. Is our country not greater when all of us have opportunities to succeed and contribute and survive? Our success and our survival as a nation is bound together. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs only exist to band-aid over decades, hell, centuries of discrimination against people's skin color, their religion, disabilities, gender, or sexual orientations, you name it. Contrary to Republican conjecture, remedying past discrimination is not, in turn, a discrimination. And we're not going to sit here and pretend racism is over just because one black person on the Supreme Court agreed that it should be. What DEI does not do is give some kind of magical pass to better jobs, like some of our colleagues are implying. That middle word, equity, does not mean more than or better than. It means treating people fairly and impartially. It means working to fix generational and systemic discrimination to the betterment of all of us and all of our institutions. But instead, Republicans are trying to bastardize the term DEI to be a slur. When Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was up for confirmation and when Vice President Harris was added to the ticket, they called them DEI hires. They want you to believe that a Harvard graduate with over 20 years of experience, who happens to be a black woman, is not qualified, but a Fox News personality is qualified to run the Department of Defense, and the WWE executive is qualified to run the Department of Education.
And of course, her whole history is DEI.
So the other side doesn't really have anything to stand on, which is why they can only say, well, you know, she's a DUI or DYE, whatever. That's what people have when they don't have anything else.
That's correct.
That's why they can hit women with that. Oh, you just got hired because you're a woman. No, I got hired because you couldn't do the job.
Let's be real. There is an attempt to create a direct correlation between our race, being a black person, and our qualifications. So much as to say that there is no way to be a black woman. There is no resume that a black person could have that would qualify them unless that black person is a Republican. And there is a quota there.
Which, of course, is what they want. Only the white Christian men may have the things. And at this point, it's evident what they mean by DEI, right? Okay, it means black people. It's the reason the right complained about critical race theory. It's not fashionable to be openly racist anymore in America, unlike what they call the good old days. So, fellas, why not just say what you mean? You can't stand black people. We get it. You've been heard.
And while all of this is happening at the top level of our government, I can promise you these same things are happening on every single level of government and private sector. But those people don't have a national platform to speak out against discriminatory treatment. Where is a federal worker supposed to turn when another coworker says a racist comment to them in the break room? Where is the same-sex couple who is denied housing supposed to, because of their relationship, supposed to turn? Where is a pregnant woman who was fired for being pregnant supposed to go? Often the only place that they have to give them recourse are the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. These folks just want to do their jobs, serving the American people in an environment that feels safe and supports them. Making work a better, safer environment for some does not mean it automatically is worse for others. And those complaining about DEI training are probably the ones who need it the most. My Republican colleagues have got to stop punching down on already marginalized communities and face their own fears of a level playing field privately. It's shameful. I yield back.
An incredibly powerful takedown from Representative Lee, and one that Republicans and Comer specifically desperately needed to hear. Because while Comer, seen here again squeaking one out, has been busy trying to make money off of his failed Biden impeachment probe with a brand new book he put out, Democrats have been continuing to fight against the insidious identity politics that Republicans so claim to abhor.
The final thing that I will say is that this election is the best example of why y'all are so afraid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because then you can't have a simple-minded, underqualified white man somehow end up ascending. Instead, you've got to pay attention to the qualified black woman that is on the other side. And with that, I will yield.
Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed the video, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. And for Really American, I'm Kenny Hesse, and I'll see you all in the next one.